Hello, so this is the Optimod that is currently for sale on my eBay account. It's an Optimod FM 8200 digital made by Orban, and it's a 5-band, multi-band broadcast processor, essentially. It's got a few other little knickknacks built into it as well. So when you first power on the unit, you'll be greeted, I believe, with this screen, and there's a good chance that you won't be able to get into it, and that's because these units actually have an admin mode, which basically prevents anyone who's walking through an apps room or anything like that from going onto them and sort of playing about with the settings and causing problems. And you can actually set different users, so there's a few different profiles which you can set up and things like that to give different people different access. So whilst we're here, let's have a quick look. So this is the settings for the unit. I'm not sure how well this will come out on the screen. Hopefully it's vaguely legible, but it basically lists all of the installed IO and the DSP cards, and it's just telling you exactly what's going on with it. You can do a quick setup, so when you first get the unit, it'll just basically roll through all the basics to get you on air with it. IO calibration is all of the settings which allow you to sort of interface a unit properly with your external system. So on the back, it's got things like what you sync your clock to, ALD input, digital input sampling rates, and things like that. There's quite a lot of user customizability here to make the unit interface properly with whatever you've got. There's a couple of things that are designed for if you're interfacing this unit with other Optimod hardware, which is probably unlikely on the basis that it's quite hard to find. But if you do have it, then it's there, and I believe that's in this menu as well. So at the moment, basically, I've got it set up to interface with this ADDA, which is just an ultra match. It's a fairly cheap analog to digital converter. So yeah, so that's the IO calibration. Here you've got your time and date settings, which at the moment is wrong because I need to change the battery in this unit, which I will do before it gets sent out to a buyer. Here you can set the passcode, and you can set up exactly what you want passwords to do. You can set a timeout so that it will automatically lock itself if you forget to, which is quite handy if someone walks off after setting it up and leaves it open. And here is control interface. So this is, I believe this is a remote control interface. So you could have like, is it GPI, I believe? Basically you could have a remote controlling the interface. So a presenter could enter a studio and basically just click, boom, that's my show. That's the sound profile that I want. And it will automatically load it. Similarly, you can do scheduling on this unit, which is in the automation. And if you enable that, which is there, you can program it all. And basically you can set this to dynamically change. So you can see here, this one is currently set to radio 2, and it's got steps on it. So it didn't change blatantly, obviously, if that makes sense. So yeah, so you can sort of sync it to your schedule, which will alter the sound profile of the output based on the time of day. So if you've got a sort of drive time show and you want it a bit more mellow or whatever. What haven't we looked at? System setup, we've already been in there. IO meters, so you can switch between gain reduction meter and IO meter. So this is the digital input. At the moment, there's nothing playing through the unit. We'll play something in a second. So you can see your input here and your output here, and it gives you an idea of sort of the level adjustment that's going on. This is the main multi-band compressor view. So you've got, I believe this is the overall gain reduction. I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me on that. Here it's indicating whether or not the unit's gated. So at the moment there's not enough of an input to trigger the gate to release. So basically any really low level inputs you can set so that the gate doesn't trigger, which means that they'll sort of remain consistent, which is handy, I guess, if you want to maintain a little bit of dynamic range and stuff like that, or if you've got specific signals that you don't want altered. That can be disabled though as well, so it will process basically anything, and you can set exactly what your threshold volume is. This is the main multi-band here, so you've got 5 bands of compression here. They did a unit, I think, with only three bands of compression. This is a 5-band unit, so this is the better one. And it's basically, it's a basic frequency response thing. So you can configure these to respond at different frequencies, which we'll have a look at in a second. But it'll basically, when there's something playing, it will just tell you exactly how much it's being pulled down by, which is sort of a clear indicator of what's going on, I suppose. What should we have a look at? So in modified processing, so there's 2 versions of modified processing. There's a very basic mode, which is less or more. And you can use this on the presets on the unit, basically to just determine, it's sort of just telling it how much you want it to compress by, and how much of the effect you want to hear. And you can even A/B it, I believe. 2 different modes. So if you've made changes and you want to hear, well, actually, is this any better? Then you can do that. And if you click Save Changes, then it will apply it. The other mode is Full Control, which is a bit more powerful. Let's just return there. Oh, go away. If we click Full Control, it will give us the full setup for this this preset. So each preset has its own full control section, and there's quite a few things here that you can play about with, and it would be very, very easy to start making mistakes here. So I would suggest, if you're going to start fiddling with these, which you probably should, just go slow and do one at a time, and probably run some audio through whilst you're doing it. So there's bass coupling, which I believe is kind of like a harmonic enhancement thing for the bass, which will just give you a slightly better bass response. Down expansion threshold is currently switched off because we're on folk oldies, I believe, which obviously you don't want that on. That again is sort of an expander for the low end. There's a manual available online which probably explains this as substantially better than I could, so it's probably worth having a look at that. AGC, that is what we were looking at earlier, so maybe that isn't the overall gain control. Yeah, I can't say I know exactly what that is, but I believe it's something to do with the overall volume. You've got basic bass boost parameters here. I'm not exactly sure what the frequency response on these is, but there's a low and a mid bass. You've got presence and sibilance, brilliance, sorry, and a final clip drive, which can sort of be used to add a bit of bite, I suppose you would call it. That's the gate threshold that I mentioned earlier. So if I turn that all the way down to the bottom, it changes to off, and then that disables the gate essentially. This one was set to 40, so we'll leave it there. And you can see if you've made a change, it says M on the right hand side of the screen there, just to sort of indicate that something's happening. High frequency clipping. Again, I'm not 100% sure what a lot of these do, because there's a lot, and I haven't read the manual in enough depth to confidently comment on it. DJ Bass Boost is a really basic bass boost, which sort of sounds very poppy, which is kind of fun, depending on what you're using it for. And then that's basically it in terms of full control. There's a lot of stuff there, so I mean you could sit there probably and play with it for quite a while. But yeah, it's really powerful in terms of the level of customizability that you can get. So I mean, on this particular unit, because it's a BBC unit, it's got a number of BBC presets. So there's a Radio 1 one, a Radio 1 concert, which was used for live lounges and things like that, I believe. Radio 2 mainstream and Radio 2 specialist. I'm not 100% sure about the specialist one. Radio 3, sorry, mainstream and limit. Radio 4 mainstream and limit. These are the steps which I mentioned briefly earlier in that scheduler mode. That's how that's stepping between them, is it's just a preset that's sort of midway between the two, and they're just sort of gently changing the processing and iteration so it doesn't sort of change like that, which is probably a good idea. These are a couple that I have added just whilst I've been testing. So there's a Studio One. Talk was designed for just spoken word. And then these are all blank presets for you to add. And I mean, you can overwrite any of the other ones. And then we're back to, this is the top of the default presets. So there's some protection modes. So there's a 2-band processing, which I believe, so maybe it was a 2-band one, that you could buy. So there's a 2-band set, processed, classical, and processed. I'm not sure about the difference between PUR and NOR. There's some basic 5 bands, just iterations between the response speed of them. And then you've got your sort of genre-based presets. So there is classical, modern country, AOR, I'm not 100% of what AOR stands for, adult contemporary urban, soft urban, new age, oldies, jazz, beautiful, MOR, talk, there's a bypass one, and there is a user tone mode which can be used to send tone out. So that's just a handy way of testing. Anyway, I've bambled on for quite a while now, so I'll just pause the camera and restart recording, and then we'll run some songs for it and hear how it sounds.